I was 8 months pregnant when my doctor asked me why my husband had already made that decision. She said it casually, like it was a line she used every day. I remember the way her pen stopped moving before she looked up, like she wanted to be sure she'd read the form correctly. I told her he was just helping me. That answer came out fast. Too fast. I didn't think about it until later. The exam room felt colder than usual. The paper on the table crinkled under my legs when I shifted. My feet didn't quite reach the step stool, so my calves were tense, holding themselves up without permission. Dr. Nguyen nodded once and went back to my chart. She didn't say anything else right away. She adjusted the blood pressure cuff around my arm and asked me to relax. I tried. My mind kept circling the same sentence. Why your husband had already made that decision. I watched the numbers climb on the monitor and then settle. She wrote them down without comment. How have you been sleeping? She asked. I told her the truth. Not well. How's your stress level? I hesitated. That pause was new. I hadn't done that before. About the same, I said. She hummed quietly and typed something into the computer. The screen reflected faintly in her glasses. I couldn't see what she wrote. The baby moved. Slow, deliberate. I pressed my hand against my stomach and waited for her to settle. Dr. Nguyen noticed. She's active today, she said. She always is, I replied. That part felt familiar. Safe. When the appointment ended, she handed me a printout and told me the front desk would schedule my next visit. I slid off the table carefully, pulling my sweater down even though it already covered everything. At the door, she added, if you have questions about any of the paperwork, you can always ask before signing. I smiled and thanked her. I didn't ask. 3 weeks earlier, my husband David came home with takeout and a stack of envelopes. He set them on the kitchen counter like they were nothing. Junk mail, grocery receipts, things you deal with later. I was sitting at the table with my feet propped on another chair, sorting tiny socks into a laundry basket. I had already washed them twice, even though the tags were still on. Mail came, he said. I looked up. Anything important? Hospital stuff, insurance. He opened one envelope and skimmed it, then another. I watched his face while he read. Not because I was suspicious, because that's what I did now. I watched more than I used to. He slid a few pages toward me and tapped the corner with his finger. They need these signed before your next appointment. I picked them up. The paper was heavier than regular printer paper. Official, dense with text. Do you want me to read them? I asked. He shook his head. It's standard stuff. Consent forms, billing authorizations. They just updated their system. I flipped through the pages anyway. Paragraphs blurred together. My eyes stopped catching full sentences after the first page. David stood behind me and rested his hands on my shoulders. Light pressure. Familiar. I already filled in what I could, he said. They just need your signature. I leaned back slightly, letting my shoulders relax into his hands. When did you have time to do this? I asked. He smiled. During lunch. I called the office. They walked me through it. That sounded helpful. Responsible. I signed where the sticky notes marked, initialed where he pointed. There was a line that mentioned medical decision authority. I remember that because I paused there. What's this one? I asked. He leaned closer, reading over my shoulder. That's in case you're under anesthesia or if something unexpected happens. It just lets me speak for you. I nodded. That also sounded reasonable. I signed. After that, we ate dinner on the couch and watched a show neither of us was really paying attention to. David fell asleep halfway through, his hand resting on my thigh. I stayed awake, folding the baby socks again, even though they were already paired. I didn't think about the papers. The pregnancy had been uncomplicated so far. That's what everyone kept saying. Healthy, textbook, normal. I was tired, but I assumed that came with the territory. My feet swelled by mid-afternoon. My lower back stayed tight no matter how many pillows I used at night. David said I was glowing. I didn't feel like anything special. I felt heavy, slower, less certain about where I belonged in my own body. David had started speaking for me more often. At restaurants, he ordered my food before the server finished asking. At family gatherings, he answered questions about the nursery, the name, the due date. I let him. It felt easier than correcting him. At my next OB appointment, he took the afternoon off work and sat beside me in the exam room. He held my purse on his lap while I changed into the gown. Dr. Nguyen greeted him by name. I noticed that too. They talked about scheduling, about insurance approvals, about hospital policy changes. I listened, nodding along. When she mentioned the consent forms, David said, "We already took care of that." She smiled and typed. I sat there with my hands folded in my lap, listening to them talk about me like I wasn't fully in the room. That was new. The night before the appointment, where Dr. Nguyen asked her question, I couldn't sleep. David was already out, breathing slow and even. I lay on my side, staring at the digital clock on the nightstand. 2:14, then 2:15. The baby shifted again. I adjusted my position, then adjusted it back. I thought about the forms, about the way David had said we already took care of that. I told myself I was overthinking it. That was becoming a habit too. At the front desk the next morning, the receptionist handed me a clipboard. "Just need you to confirm these," she said. I scanned the top page. My name, date of birth, insurance number. Then I saw David's name, listed under primary decision maker. I looked up. "Is this new?" She smiled politely. "It's what we have on file." I handed the clipboard back without saying anything. David stood a few feet away, scrolling on his phone. He looked up when he felt my eyes on him. "All set?" he asked. "Yes," I said. That word felt different now. When Dr. Nguyen asked her question later, something shifted, just enough that I noticed. I walked out of the office afterward with the printout folded in my bag. David talked about lunch plans, about traffic, about how we should pack our hospital bags soon. I nodded at the right places. At home, while he was in the shower, I pulled the signed forms from the folder in my bag and laid them out on the kitchen table. I read every line this time. Slowly, I spread the pages across the kitchen table like they might rearrange themselves if I gave them enough space. The overhead light buzzed softly. I turned it off and relied on the lamp instead. The room felt smaller that way, contained. I read the first page again, then the second. I slowed down when the language shifted from general information to something firmer. Words stopped flowing and started stacking. Medical decision authority. In the event the patient is unable to consent, designated representative. My name appeared once at the top. David's name appeared everywhere else. I followed each sentence with my finger, the way I used to do in school when I wanted to be sure I wasn't missing anything. My eyes moved faster than my understanding. I went back and read it again. The baby rolled, hard enough to pull a sound from my throat. I rested both hands on my stomach and waited. This wasn't about insurance. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. The pipes rattled. I gathered the papers into a neat stack and slid them back into the folder just as David came down the stairs, towel around his neck, hair still damp. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He leaned against the counter and smiled. "You're up early." I couldn't sleep. He nodded like that explained everything. "We should eat," he said. "You need to keep your strength up." I watched him move around the kitchen, confident, familiar, like nothing had changed. While he cooked, I pulled out my phone and searched the name of the document I'd signed. The results were dense. Legal forms, hospital policy pages, stories buried in comment sections. I stopped reading when my chest tightened. At breakfast, David talked about his meeting schedule for the week. He mentioned rearranging his calendar around my appointments. He said it like a courtesy. I nodded. When he left for work, he kissed my forehead and told me to rest. I stood at the door and watched his car pull out of the driveway. Then I sat back down at the table. I called the hospital. The woman who answered spoke quickly, like she'd already taken too many calls that morning. "I have a question about my consent forms," I said. She asked for my date of birth, my file number. I heard keys tapping. "Yes," she said. "I see the authorization." "I just wanted clarification," I said. "What exactly does it allow?" There was a pause, not long, just enough. "It gives your husband authority to make medical decisions in certain situations," she said. "Which situations?" "In the event you're unable to." "Unable how?" Another pause. "Sedation, emergency procedures, complications." My grip tightened around the phone. "And me, I asked. What decisions do I still make? You make all routine decisions, she said. This applies only if you're considered incapacitated. Incapacitated, I repeated. Yes. The word sat heavy between us. Can that be changed? I asked. She hesitated. You'd need to speak with your provider. I thanked her and hung up. The house felt too quiet after that. I walked from room to room, straightening things that didn't need it. The nursery door stayed closed. I wasn't ready to go in there yet. I waited until the baby settled, then called my sister. She answered on the third ring. Hey, she said, what's going on? I told her about the paperwork, about the phone call. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. That's serious, she said. It's normal, right? I asked. It can be, she said carefully, but you should have understood it. I asked, I said. He explained it. There was a pause on her end now. You should talk to a lawyer, she said. I don't want to make this a thing. It already is, she replied. I stared at the closed nursery door. That evening, David came home late. I waited until after dinner to bring it up. I didn't want to sound emotional. I practiced the words while he chewed. I called the hospital today, I said. He looked up. Why? I wanted clarification on the forms. His expression stayed neutral, interested, controlled. And? They said you have full decision authority in certain situations. Yes, he said. That's what it's for. I didn't realize how broad it was. He set his fork down carefully. Lauren, it's standard. We talked about this. I asked a question, I said. You answered it. And? I didn't understand it. He sighed, rubbing his temples. You're pregnant. You're tired. This is exactly why these safeguards exist. That word again, safeguards. For who? I asked. For the baby, he said. And for you. I watched his face while he said it. He believed that, or wanted me to. I'd like to change it, I said. His jaw tightened, just slightly. Why would you want to do that? He asked. I want to understand it first. We don't have time to redo paperwork, he said. Your due date is coming up. I still want to, I said. He leaned back in his chair. You're letting stress get to you. I'm asking a question, and I'm answering it, he said. Nothing has changed. Something had. He reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was firm, reassuring, familiar. Trust me, he said. I nodded. That night I slept lightly. Every time I shifted, the baby responded. My dreams came in pieces, hallways, clipboards, voices I couldn't quite hear. In the morning, David told me he'd scheduled my next appointment himself. He said it like a favor. They had an opening sooner, he said. I thought you'd appreciate that. I stared at him. You didn't ask, I said. I didn't need to, he replied. I know your schedule. I wrote the appointment time down anyway. At the appointment, Dr. Nguyen greeted me with the same calm smile. She reviewed my chart, asked routine questions. When David stepped out to take a call, she looked up. You've been quiet today, she said. I've been reading my paperwork, I replied. Her eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. Do you have concerns? She asked. Yes, I said. She waited. I want to understand why I'm not listed as the primary decision maker during labor. She didn't answer right away. The document you signed designates your husband in specific circumstances, she said. Who decides when those circumstances apply? I asked. She folded her hands together. Hospital policy. And who initiates that? Usually the attending physician, she said, in coordination with hospital protocol. I nodded slowly. If I disagree? I asked. Her expression shifted, focused. That would be complicated, she said. David returned before I could ask anything else. The rest of the appointment moved quickly. In the car, he asked how it went. Fine, I said. He smiled. That afternoon, I received an email from the hospital portal, a notification. Your consent forms have been processed. Attached was a copy. I opened it. At the bottom, beneath my signature, was a timestamp. 3 days before the night he brought the papers home. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. After I saw the timestamp, I stopped sleeping through the night. It wasn't panic that kept me awake. It was a steady, low awareness that something had shifted without my permission. The kind of awareness that settles in your body before it ever reaches language. I replayed the moment he'd handed me the papers, the way he'd already marked the signature lines, the way he'd answered my question without really answering it. 3 days earlier, that meant the document existed before I touched it. I didn't confront him right away, not because I didn't want answers, but because I needed to understand what kind of question I was actually asking. In the morning, David left for work like nothing had happened, kissed my cheek, told me to text if I needed anything, asked what I wanted for dinner. I waited until his car was gone before opening my laptop again. I logged into the hospital portal. The interface was clean and friendly, the kind designed to make everything feel simple. Appointments, messages, forms. I clicked through each tab slowly. Under Care Team, David's name appeared before mine. I stared at it longer than I should have. I sent a message to the office asking for clarification about my consent preferences. I kept the wording neutral, polite, curious. I'd like to review my options regarding decision-making authority during labor. The response came 2 hours later. Your current documentation is complete and reflects the information provided. Nothing else. I closed the laptop and stood up too quickly. The room tilted. I grabbed the back of a chair and waited for my vision to settle. That afternoon, my sister called. I did some reading, she said without preamble. And, I asked. This kind of authorization isn't unusual, she said, but the timing is. I didn't respond. Did you ask him about the timestamp? She continued. No. Why not? I thought about that. Because I don't know what he'll say yet. She was quiet for a moment. That's not a good reason. I know, I said. That evening, David cooked dinner and talked about his day, a project at work, a co-worker who missed a deadline. The way he spoke made everything sound orderly, controlled. I watched his hands while he chopped vegetables, precise, confident. Did the hospital message you back? He asked casually. Yes, I said. And? They said everything was complete. He nodded. Good. I waited for him to say more. He didn't. After dinner, he carried the plates to the sink and rinsed them before loading the dishwasher. He always did that. It was one of the things I'd loved about him early on, the way he took care of small details. I followed him into the kitchen. The timestamp on the form, I said. It says it was processed before you gave it to me. He didn't stop moving. That's probably when they generated it. It says processed. He shrugged. Same difference. I leaned against the counter. The cool surface pressed into my lower back. You told me you filled it out during lunch, I said. I did. But it was already submitted. He closed the dishwasher and turned to face me. You're reading too much into this, he said. The hospital uploads things in batches. Then why did they need my signature? He exhaled slowly. Because it's required. For something that was already done. For something that needed confirmation, he said. Lauren, this isn't a fight. I'm not fighting, I replied. You're acting like something's wrong. I watched his face, waiting for a crack, a flicker. There wasn't one. I just want to understand, I said. And I want you to stop stressing yourself out, he replied. This isn't good for the baby. He said that gently, reasonably. It landed harder than he intended. I went to bed early that night. He stayed up watching TV. I lay on my side, listening to the muffled sounds of the show through the wall. At some point, the baby started hiccuping, small rhythmic movements low in my belly. I pressed my palm there and counted until they stopped. The next week, things shifted in small ways. David began checking in more often, asking where I was going, offering to drive me places I'd always driven myself. I don't mind, he said. I just want to make sure you're okay. At my prenatal yoga class, he waited in the car instead of dropping me off. I watched him through the window while I stretched on the mat. He looked up every few minutes, like he was checking the time. After class, the instructor pulled me aside. You seem distracted lately, she said. I'm just tired, I replied. She nodded. Listen to your body. I was. That was the problem. A few days later, a nurse from the hospital called to confirm my upcoming appointment. She spoke quickly, efficiently. And your husband will be attending? She asked. I'm not sure yet, I said. There was a brief pause. He's listed as the primary contact. I am too, I said. Yes, she replied. but his number comes up first. When I hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. That evening, I logged back into the portal and tried to update my contact preferences. The option was grayed out. A message appeared beneath it. This setting cannot be changed without provider approval. I closed the page. The baby rolled again, slow and heavy. I stood up and walked into the nursery for the first time in days. The crib was assembled. The walls were painted a soft neutral color David had chosen. Boxes of diapers sat unopened in the corner. I sat on the floor and leaned back against the wall. I thought about the moment I'd signed the paper, how tired I'd been, how relieved I'd felt that someone else was handling things. I stayed there until my legs went numb. The call came from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Hello?" I said. "Hi, Lauren. This is Megan from Patient Services at the hospital." My chest tightened. "I'm calling to follow up on your inquiry regarding consent documentation." "Yes," I said. "There was a note added to your file requesting clarification," she continued. "I wanted to make sure we addressed it properly." I moved to the couch and sat down slowly. "I have concerns about how my forms were processed," I said. "Of course," she replied. "According to our records, your husband submitted the initial authorization electronically." "I didn't know that was possible." "It's allowed if the patient has already provided verbal consent," she said. "I didn't," I said. There was a pause. "Would you like to schedule a meeting with your provider to discuss this?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "We can arrange that," she replied. "Your husband is copied on all correspondence." I closed my eyes. "Please don't include him," I said. "I'm not sure that's possible," she replied. "He's listed as—" "I'm the patient," I said. Another pause. "I'll see what I can do," she said carefully. When David came home that night, I was sitting at the table with my laptop open. "We need to talk," I said. He glanced at the screen. "About what?" "The hospital called." His expression changed. "What did they say?" "They said you submitted the authorization electronically," I replied. "Yes." "Without me." "With you," he corrected. "You agreed." "When?" I asked. "When we talked about it." "We talked about paperwork," I said. "Not this." He sat down across from me. "Lauren, you were overwhelmed. You asked me to handle things." "I asked you to help." "And I did," he said. "This is what help looks like." I felt the baby move again, harder this time. I pressed my hand against my stomach, breathing slowly. "You took that decision from me," I said. "I protected you," he replied. "Someone has to think clearly." I stared at him. "That's not your call," I said. "It is," he said. "Legally." The words settled between us. I thought of the timestamp, of the grayed out settings, of the nurse's pause. "You planned this," I said. He didn't deny it. "I anticipated needs," he said. "There's a difference." "For who?" I asked. "For the baby," he said. I stood up, my legs unsteady. "I need space," I said. He nodded. "Of course." He didn't move. That night I slept with the bedroom door locked. In the morning I packed a small bag and drove to my sister's house. I didn't tell David until I was already there. He didn't sound surprised. "I figured you might," he said. "We'll talk when you're calmer." I hung up without responding. At my sister's kitchen table, I spread the paperwork out again. This time I noticed something I hadn't before. A clause near the end. In the event of prolonged incapacity, authority extends to postpartum medical decisions. Postpartum. I felt my throat tighten. I thought about the appointment coming up, the delivery, the moment when everything would move fast. I realized then that whatever David had done, he'd done it early enough that stopping it would not be simple, and that I had less time than I thought. My sister didn't ask questions the first night I stayed with her. She handed me a glass of water, pointed me toward the guest room, and let me close the door without explaining myself. I lay on the bed fully dressed, one hand on my stomach, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of her house settling around me. The baby moved differently there, quieter, as if she was listening too. In the morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. My sister was already at the kitchen table with her laptop open. Papers were spread out beside it, printed, highlighted. "I didn't sleep," she said. "Me neither." She turned the screen toward me. Legal language, hospital policies, forums where women described experiences that sounded too close to mine. I called a family law attorney, she said. She specializes in maternal consent and custody issues. My stomach tightened. She can see you this afternoon. That fast? She made room. I nodded. That was becoming easier than arguing. The attorney's office was small and bright, tucked between a dentist and a yoga studio. The waiting room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. There were no magazines on the table, just pamphlets stacked neatly in a rack. Lauren Mitchell, they read. I sat carefully in the chair across from her desk while she reviewed the paperwork. She didn't rush. She didn't frown. She didn't interrupt herself. When she finished, she looked up at me. Your husband was strategic, she said. The word landed quietly. He didn't break the law, she continued, but he positioned himself early. How early, I asked. Before you signed, she said. Possibly before you were aware you needed to be protected. Protected. He anticipated a situation where your ability to object could be limited, she said, and he ensured he would be the one making decisions in that window. That window is a labor, I said. Yes. And after, she added. My throat tightened. What can I do? I asked. She folded her hands together. We can challenge it, but timing matters. How much time do I have? She glanced at my file. How far along are you? 33 weeks. She nodded once. Then we need to move quickly. She explained the steps in a measured way. Motions, objections, requests for amended consent. Letters sent directly to the hospital administration. Your husband will be notified, she said. I know. Do you feel safe? She asked. The question caught me off guard. Yes, I said after a moment. She watched my face carefully. If that changes, call me. When I left the office, my sister squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, she said. I wasn't sure yet. That evening, David called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. His voice sounded the same as always. Calm, controlled. Lauren, this isn't productive. You're escalating something that doesn't need to be escalated. Call me. I deleted it. The next morning, I received an email from the hospital. We have received a request to review your consent documentation. Please note that any changes may affect your scheduled care. Affect. That word followed me around all day. At my next appointment, Dr. Nguyen looked more serious than usual. I received a notice from administration, she said. They informed me of a legal inquiry regarding your consent forms. I nodded. She closed the exam room door before continuing. I need to be clear, she said. This complicates things. I know, I replied. She studied me for a moment. Did you feel pressured to sign? No, I said, then paused. I felt tired. She nodded slowly. That matters, she said, but it doesn't erase what's already been filed. David wasn't there that day. He'd been informed not to attend until the review was complete. The room felt quieter without him. I want you to know, Dr. Nguyen continued, that my priority is your health and the baby's, regardless of administrative issues. I appreciated that. It didn't make me feel safer. When I left the appointment, I sat in my car for a long time without starting the engine. The baby kicked, strong, steady. I thought about how close we were now, how little room there was left for mistakes. The letter from David's attorney arrived 2 days later. It was polite, professional, carefully worded. He was concerned about my mental state, about my stress levels, about the potential impact on the pregnancy. He suggested mediation. I laughed out loud when I read it. The sound surprised me. My sister didn't laugh. They're building a narrative, she said. I know. That afternoon, my attorney called. They're pushing for stability, she said. That's the angle. Stability for who? I asked. For the baby, she replied. That phrase does a lot of work. David texted me that evening. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. I didn't respond. Instead, I packed my hospital bag. I hadn't planned to do it that night, but once I started, I couldn't stop. Clothes, toiletries, documents, copies of everything. I placed the folder with the amended consent request at the top. When I finished, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it. I felt heavier than I had all pregnancy, like every choice carried more weight than before. The next morning, my attorney called again. They've agreed to review the documentation, she said, But they're not suspending it yet. Why not? Because labor hasn't started. That answer scared me more than I expected. At the hospital, administrators met with my attorney and Dr. Nguyen. I wasn't allowed in the room. I waited in the hallway, watching nurses move past me with clipboards and carts. Everything moved quickly there, efficiently. David wasn't there. That was intentional. After an hour, Dr. Nguyen came out. They're reviewing the language, she said. They're considering limiting the scope. Considering, I repeated. It's something, she said. That night, my water didn't break. I didn't go into labor, but I dreamed about it. In the dream, I was lying on a table under bright lights. People spoke over me. Someone asked David a question. He answered without looking at me. I woke up gasping. My sister knocked softly on the door. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said. It wasn't a lie. Not exactly. The next day, the hospital sent another email. "Your care team has updated your file." I logged in immediately. Under decision authority, the language had changed. David's name was still there. So was mine. Joint authority. My chest loosened slightly. It wasn't everything, but it was movement. I forwarded the update to my attorney. "This helps," she replied. "But stay alert." David called that night. This time I answered. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Protecting myself," I said. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "For who?" I asked. "For all of us," he replied. I waited. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "I know," I replied. That was the truth. I also knew it didn't change anything. When I hung up, I placed my hands on my stomach and spoke softly. Not to calm myself, to ground myself. Soon, I thought. The first contraction came while I was brushing my teeth. It stopped me mid-motion, the kind that settles and refuses to move. I leaned forward over the sink and waited. It stayed. I watched myself in the mirror, toothbrush frozen in my hand, belly pulling tight under my shirt. When it passed, I rinsed my mouth and checked the time. 6 minutes later, it happened again. I didn't call David. I sat on the edge of the bed and breathed through it, listening to the house. My sister's footsteps upstairs, the faint hum of the heater. When the third one came, my sister appeared in the doorway. "That's not practice," she said. "I know." She didn't ask if I was ready. She grabbed the bag. In the car, I texted David anyway. "I'm going to the hospital." The response came almost instantly. "I'll meet you there." I stared at the screen, then turned it face down. At the hospital, everything moved faster than I expected. The triage nurse spoke calmly, but her hands moved with purpose. "How far apart?" she asked. "About 5 minutes." She nodded. "Let's get you checked." They placed the monitor around my stomach. The baby's heartbeat filled the room. Fast, steady. "You're progressing," the nurse said. "Not active yet, but close." She asked who was with me. "My sister," I said. She wrote it down. David arrived 10 minutes later. I heard his voice before I saw him. "I'm her husband." The nurse looked up at him, then back at her screen. "I have that," she said. "Please have a seat." Something about the way she said please felt deliberate. David sat, but his leg bounced. He kept checking his watch. Dr. Nguyen arrived and reviewed my chart at the foot of the bed. "I want to be clear before we move forward," she said. I nodded. "There have been updates to your consent documentation," she continued. "Both of you are listed." David straightened. "That's correct." She glanced at him, then back at me. "If there's disagreement," she said, "we'll pause and discuss." Pause. I repeated that word in my head. The contractions grew stronger. The room narrowed to breath and counting. My sister stayed close, reminding me to slow down. At some point, Dr. Nguyen mentioned intervention as a possibility. David spoke immediately. "We should be prepared for that." I turned my head toward him. "Prepared doesn't mean decided," I said. His mouth tightened. "I'm thinking ahead." "So am I," I replied. The nurse adjusted the monitor. The baby's heartbeat dipped, then recovered. Dr. Nguyen watched the screen closely. "It's stabilized," she said. "We'll continue." David exhaled sharply. Hours blurred together. When the pain peaked and my body shook, I asked for medication. The anesthesiologist arrived quickly. Calm, efficient. The consent form appeared again. David reached for it. "I'll take care of that," he said. No, I said. The word came out louder than I meant. The anesthesiologist paused. She needs to sign, he said. David handed me the clipboard. His fingers lingered longer than necessary. I signed. As the medication took effect, the pain dulled, but everything else sharpened. I noticed how often David spoke for me, how staff responded to him out of habit, how easily authority slid toward him when things moved quickly. The baby's heart rate dipped again later. The room changed. More people. Faster voices. Dr. Nguyen spoke clearly. We may need to move toward intervention if this continues. David stood. Do what's necessary, he said. I lifted my head. We'll talk first, I said. The room went quiet. Dr. Nguyen met my eyes. We will, she said. The heart rate recovered, but something shifted. David didn't sit back down. By the time I started pushing, exhaustion had stripped everything down to instinct. There was no room left for politeness or compromise. I followed instructions, I breathed, I pushed. David stayed near my head, close enough that I could feel his presence even when I didn't look at him. When the baby cried, the sound cut through everything. They placed her on my chest, warm, real, alive. For a moment, nothing else existed. David leaned in. She's perfect. I didn't answer. The hours after the birth moved strangely, slow and rushed at the same time. Nurses checked vitals. Paperwork appeared and disappeared. I drifted in and out of sleep. When I woke again, David was standing near the window, phone in hand. They're bringing some forms, he said. Routine discharge stuff. My body felt heavy. My thoughts lagged. A nurse knocked and entered with a clipboard. Just need signatures when you're ready, she said cheerfully. David reached for it. I watched his hand. Let me see it, I said. He hesitated, just a fraction. It's standard, he said. I want to read it. The nurse shifted uncomfortably. I can come back later, she offered. No, David said. We can do it now. I took the clipboard. The words blurred at first, then settled. Postpartum medical authority, extended decision-making, emergency consent. My name appeared once. David's appeared everywhere else. I handed it back. I'm not signing this, I said. David's face hardened. You're exhausted, he said. This isn't the time. This is exactly the time, I replied. The nurse cleared her throat. She doesn't have to sign right now, she said. David turned to her. It's for her protection. I laughed softly. The sound surprised me. For whose protection? I asked. The nurse looked at me. I'll notify the charge nurse, she said, and left. David lowered his voice. You're making this difficult. I met his eyes. You did that weeks ago. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and turned away slightly. I need to take this, he said. He stepped into the hallway. I watched him through the small window in the door. He spoke quietly, listened, nodded. When he came back in, his expression had changed. Controlled. Certain. They've reviewed the situation, he said. We're going to need to talk to administration. Who is they? I asked. He didn't answer. A few minutes later, Dr. Nguyen returned with another woman I didn't recognize. This is hospital administration, she said. The woman smiled politely. We just want to make sure everyone is aligned, she said. Aligned. They spoke about policy, about safety, about procedure. They spoke like time wasn't running out. Finally, the woman turned to me. Your husband has been very proactive, she said. He's expressed concern about your decision-making capacity during recovery. The room went still. I'm here, I said. Yes, she replied. But postpartum recovery can be unpredictable. I looked at David. You told them that, I said. He didn't deny it. I prepared them, he said. The baby stirred against my chest. I tightened my hold. Dr. Nguyen shifted uncomfortably. We need to pause, she said. This conversation should include legal counsel. The administrator nodded. Of course. They left the room. David turned to me. I was trying to protect you, he said. You were trying to control me, I replied. He leaned closer. You signed the first time. I stared at him. And I won't again. He straightened. We'll see. That night, my attorney arrived. The tone of the room changed immediately. Quiet. Formal. David stopped speaking. When it was over, he left without saying goodbye. 2 hours later, a nurse returned with updated paperwork. This time, my name appeared first. David's appeared nowhere. I signed. The nurse smiled. "You're all set." When the room finally went quiet again, I held my daughter close and stared at the ceiling. I thought about the papers, the timing, the calls he'd taken in the hallway. I realized then that this wasn't over, because whatever David had been planning didn't end here, and I still didn't know who else knew. The house felt quieter after we came home. Not peaceful, just empty in a way that made sound stand out. The refrigerator hum, the ticking clock above the stove, my daughter's small breast when she slept against my chest. David did not come by. He texted once. "Let me know when you're ready to talk." I didn't answer. My attorney advised me to keep communication minimal. Everything mattered now. Tone, timing, records. That word followed me again. Records. A week after we were discharged, the hospital sent a routine follow-up email. Appointment reminders, billing notices. A prompt to review my medical history. I almost ignored it. I was tired in a way sleep did not fix. My body ached. My emotions sat close to the surface. Every decision felt heavier than it should have. That night, after my daughter finally slept for more than an hour to stretch, I opened my laptop. The patient portal loaded slowly. I clicked through without urgency at first. Visit summaries, lab results, notes written in clean, neutral language. Then I noticed a tab I had never opened before. Archived records. I hovered over it. I told myself it was nothing. Old files. Irrelevant. I clicked anyway. The page took longer to load. When it did, my stomach tightened. The date at the top was from 6 years earlier. Before the pregnancy. Before the house. Before everything I thought I understood. The memory came back before the words did. A different exam room. A different doctor. A smaller version of me sitting on the edge of a table, feet dangling, hands folded tightly in my lap. I remembered the ultrasound screen, the way the technician had gone quiet. I remembered David squeezing my hand and telling me to breathe. I remembered being told it was common, unavoidable, one of those things. I remembered trusting that explanation because I wanted to move forward. I scrolled. The notes were brief. Clinical. Patient presented with early pregnancy complications. Partner present. Options discussed. Options. I stopped scrolling. I read that line again. Options discussed. I remembered being told there were no options. I clicked deeper into the file. Another document opened. Consent forms. My name appeared once. David's appeared everywhere else. I leaned back in the chair, my heart pounding hard enough that I worried it would wake my daughter. I remembered that day more clearly now. I had been bleeding. Not a lot. Enough to scare me. David had insisted on driving. He had insisted on speaking to the nurse first. He had told me to sit down, that he would handle it. I had been shaking, crying quietly. I remembered him saying, "They know what they're doing." I remembered signing something without reading it. I scrolled further. A note from the attending physician. Patient's partner elected to proceed with recommended course. Elected. That word had weight now. The recommended course had been observation and expectant management. Another line followed. Alternative interventions declined. My hands went cold. I had never declined anything. I had never been asked. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The house was silent except for my daughter's breathing. I closed the laptop. I stood up too fast and had to steady myself against the counter. I remembered how quickly we had been ushered out of the hospital that day, how David had spoken for both of us, how he had said it was better not to dwell. I remembered the weeks afterward, the way he had encouraged me to move on, the way he had discouraged questions. I had believed him. I sank into a chair and pressed my hand against my chest, breathing slowly. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. I didn't confront David right away. I needed to understand how far back it went. The next morning, while my sister held the baby, I logged back into the portal and downloaded everything. Every record, every note, every consent. The timestamps told a story I hadn't been part of. Calls logged before I arrived at appointments, Authorizations submitted while I was at work, decisions documented as joint that had never felt that way. I took the folder to my attorney. She didn't speak while she read. When she finished, she set the papers down carefully. "This changes the context," she said. "It happened before," I replied. "Yes," she said, "and it establishes a pattern." That word again, pattern. She explained what it meant in legal terms. History, intent, behavior repeated under similar circumstances. I listened, but my thoughts kept drifting back to that first loss, to the version of me who had trusted without question. "You weren't irrational to accept what you were told," she said. "You were vulnerable. That matters." "It cost me," I replied. She nodded. "David called that evening." I let it ring. He left a message. "I don't understand why you're doing this," he said. "You're rewriting history." That sentence stayed with me. Rewriting history. I listened to the message again. Then I called him back. "I accessed my archived medical records," I said. There was a pause on the line. "Why?" he asked. "Because I needed to understand something." Another pause. "You're digging up old wounds," he said. "I'm reading documents," I replied. "That was a long time ago." "It doesn't feel that way." "You're remembering it wrong," he said. I closed my eyes. "You made decisions then," I said, "without me." "I protected you," he replied. "From what?" I asked. He didn't answer. "You said there were no options," I continued. "The records say otherwise. They told us it wouldn't change the outcome." "You told me that," I said. Silence. When he spoke again, his voice was tight. "You're doing this because you're emotional right now." "No," I said. "I'm doing this because I recognize something." "And what's that?" he asked. "That you've been deciding what I can handle for a long time." He exhaled sharply. "You needed help," he said. "You still do." I looked at my daughter sleeping in my sister's arms across the room. "I needed honesty," I replied. The line went quiet. "I never meant to hurt you," he said finally. "I believe that," I said, and I did. That made it worse. The next day, my attorney requested additional records. Emails, call logs, internal notes. Some were unavailable. Others were incomplete. But enough remained. Enough to show preparation. Enough to show repetition. Enough to show that when my body was involved, David stepped forward and I disappeared. That night, I sat alone with my daughter and thought about the future. Custody, co-parenting, conversations I hadn't had yet. I thought about how easily control could be disguised as care. I thought about the version of myself who had trusted because she didn't know what to look for. I understood now why I had felt unsettled from the beginning of this pregnancy, why the paperwork had bothered me, why my body had reacted before my mind did. This wasn't about winning, it was about remembering. I placed my daughter in her crib and stood there for a long time, watching her breathe. I knew the next phase would be quieter, slower, harder in different ways. I also knew something else. If I had questioned things sooner, years ago, my life would look different. That loss would still be a loss, but it would not have been silent, and I would never again sign something just because someone I loved told me it was for my own good. If this story meant something to you, turn on the bell so you don't miss future updates. Like, share, and subscribe.